Ladies and gentlemen.
Let me tell you something, brother.
It's Talk Wrestling Live with Felix The Cat Katlovski
and Gemini Joe.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
We heard rumbling. No. We heard rumors. Homicide. Conan. 5150 is LAX.
Listen live on Mondays at 4 p.m. on NorthCoastUnderground.com.
And follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
I'm in no mood for your wisecrack. Let's get it on.
Hey wrestling fans, this is Felix the Cat Katlovski on Talk Wrestling Live on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with you. We're getting ready to talk Impact Wrestling. We're going to kick off with the Fear After Dark report, so let's get to it.
Are you scared? It's time for Fear After Dark.
I thought this was fun and games.
Fear is a funny thing.
En cero, miedo.
Fear was meant for the art of survival. I am the new beginning.
Because we are for Ohio. By Ohio. Because we are Ohio versus everything.
I'm better than every single one in that locker room. Tessa Blanchard is undeniable.
I'm not a man. I'm a machine.
Hey wrestling fans, this is Felix the Cat Katlovski, and you're listening to Fear After Dark on Talk Wrestling Live on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with you. And we're going to get started with Impact Wrestling, as I said. We're going to be talking about some of the main feuds and themes and events going on. I know I've been kind of behind with Impact Wrestling, so we're going to try to catch you up right now. Talking about LAX and the Lucha Bros, they have a big rivalry going on April 5th, as LAX was facing Eddie Edwards and Eli Drake. You had the Lucha Bros, they distracted LAX, and they attacked them, giving Eddie Edwards the opportunity to hit the Boston Knee Party, and that's how they got the win over LAX. And after that match, you had both LAX and the Lucha Bros. They brawled in the ring, but you had Pentagon and Phoenix. They both super kicked Ortiz and Santana at the same time. They synced it. They synchronized that move. And with Ortiz still down, you had Pentagon and Phoenix powerbombing Santana through a table. Covering the feud with Scarlett Bordeaux, just different stereotypes and themes going on. You previously had Scarlett Bordeaux. She showed that she could compete with the men when she defeated the Disco Inferno Glenn Gilberti, who doubted Scarlett could beat a man and treated women's wrestling as only for eye candy. That's Disco Inferno's vision of women's wrestling, and Scarlett Bordeaux was not having that. But then you also had the Desi Hit Squad. They're another tag team that has been kind of demeaning towards women. They're from India, but that's not how the people of India view things. That's just how the Desi Hit Squad views things. Like I said, they're another tag team that has been demeaning women, and Scarlett Bordeaux, she was not going to have any of this. And on April 5th, Falaba and Scarlett, they teamed up. They took on the Desi Hit Squad, and Scarlett delivered a stink face on Raj. Scarlett Bordeaux and Falaba were victorious against the Desi Hit Squad that night on April 5th. Now, covering Rich Swann and Sami Callihan, you had on April 5th, Madman Fulton and Sami Callihan. They defeated Rich Swann, with Callihan closing that match out with a pile driver. And after that match, you had Fulton and Callihan beating down and defeating Rich Swann. After that match, you had Tommy Dreamer. He made the save, bringing a chair to the ring to attack OVE, and Callihan went on the retreat, and he didn't want Fulton to go after Tommy Dreamer at that point. So Callihan was still mad at Rich Swann because he didn't put on that OVE shirt to become the next member. Instead, you had Swann throwing that shirt into the face of Callihan disrespectfully, and later Madman Fulton was the latest member to join OVE. So Rich Swann was offered a spot in OVE. He declined it. Sami Callihan put him in a hospital, and he even told him that he loves him, which was kind of creepy. But if you think about it, these guys go way back. I mean, Sami Callihan saw Rich Swann when he was homeless. Sami Callihan helped Rich Swann out, and Rich Swann doesn't want to pay back Sami Callihan for all the things that he did to him. Now, we know Sami Callihan's out there. He beats people up, sends them to the hospital, and he tells them that he did it because he loves them. So that's kind of really messed up, but that tells you a little bit about Sami Callihan right there. In another feud, we had Su Yung, and she's been having this rivalry with Rosemary and Kiera Hogan. Now, previously at Against All Odds on March 29th, you had Allie. She was killed off from storylines when Su Yung accidentally slit Allie's throat with this Freddy Krueger-like metal claw. And while Su Yung lost her ally in Allie, you had Rosemary and Kiera Hogan, who lost a friend. They were really close friends with Allie until she was consumed by the dark side, but they always tried to fight for her and stick by her and try to get her away from Su Yung. Well, on April 12th, Rosemary took on Su Yung, and she didn't want Kiera Hogan's help in that match. But Kiera still got involved in Rosemary's match, and she initially meant to help Rosemary, but Kiera Hogan ended up arguing with Rosemary, and it allowed Su Yung and her undead bridesmaids to hold Kiera back and make her watch her friend Rosemary get destroyed by Su Yung. So because of the interference by the undead bridesmaids, the match was thrown out by the ref, and after delivering her finishing move, the panic switch, to Rosemary, Su Yung put Kiera through the panic switch as well. So things aren't looking good for Kiera Hogan and Rosemary. I mean, their friendship, it looks like it's on ice right there. So talking about the X Division, on April 5th, Petey Williams closed out his match against OVE's Jake Christ with a Super Canadian Destroyer from the top rope. Now, you also had Moose taking on the Rascals, and previously things got heated between the Rascals and Moose when Moose joined the Rascals in their circle. He was mad that Trey Miguel was cracking jokes about how Impact Wrestling backstage interviewer Melissa Santos rejected Moose when he was flirting with her. And over the past few shows, Moose has been going after the Rascals, and on April 12th, you had Moose dominating Zach Wentz, lifting him over the head and throwing Wentz to the outside of the ring. But while the Rascals caught Wentz in the air, you had Moose, he continued his attack on the Rascals and Zach Wentz as well, but Wentz eventually had some offensive moves against Moose. However, it just wasn't enough because Moose just killed Zach's offensive strategy with a spear and closing out that match with a pin, followed by the win. So Moose got the upper hand on the Rascals, and the Rascals still look to be dominated by Moose. What are they going to do? I mean, each week, Moose takes out another member of the Rascals, and they're just helpless. So the Lethal Weapons debut, that took place on April 12th. We're talking about the man Josh Alexander. He made a monstrous debut up north in Windsor as he tag teamed with Ethan Page, taking on the team of El Reverso, and great tag team combinations by Page and Alexander to get that victory. Now, Taya, you have her feud with Jordan Grace. That's been taking place throughout the past few shows. And on April 5th, Jordan Grace retained her #1 contendership spot for Taya Valkyrie's Knockouts Championship by defeating Madison Rayne with the Grace Driver. But after that match, you had Taya Valkyrie and Johnny Impact. They both jumped Jordan, and as Taya and Johnny were making their attack on Jordan Grace, Brian Cage was the one to make the save, and he made Taya and Johnny Impact flee the ring. So on April 12th, Johnny Impact teamed with Taya, and Brian Cage teamed with Jordan Grace for a match. But Johnny Bravo, an Impact Wrestling senior referee, tripped Brian Cage as he was about to go for the finisher, the Drill Claw, on Johnny Impact. Now, once Brian Cage realized what had happened after he was screwed by Johnny Bravo, who counted fast to get Johnny Impact the win, Brian Cage tried to go after Johnny Bravo, but Taya hit Cage in the jewels. So looking at Tessa Blanchard and Gail Kim, on April 12th, Tessa Blanchard made her attack on Madison Rayne as she brought chairs to the match, and sitting at ringside by commentary, Gail Kim was called for the ref to stop Tessa. But Tessa started getting in Gail's face, and the ref couldn't stop Tessa, so Gail got on the ring canvas during the match, distracting Tessa as Gail took the chair away, and it allowed Madison to get the 3 count on a distracted Tessa Blanchard with a roll-up. Now, we'll be talking about last week's episode of Impact Wrestling, April 19th, right after these messages.
Ride the winds, flying far and soaring like a hawk.
Run a marathon with the endurance of a tiger.
Swim across the ocean like a dolphin.
Beast Energy X. Do you have it in you?
Buy Beast Energy X at all Waffle Max locations and unleash the beast in you.
Join the Beast Energy X fan club and get free perks. Sign up by following us on Twitter at Beast Energy X.
Follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
I'm not finished with you!
And now, let's get back to the show. Hey wrestling fans, this is Felix the Cat Katlovski once again on Talk Wrestling Live. This is Fear After Dark, and you're listening to NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with you. So we were talking a little bit about Impact Wrestling, what's been happening, just covering different feuds from Tessa Blanchard and her feud with Gail Kim to the rivalry with Jordynne Grace and Taya Valkyrie. We even talked about Brian Cage and Johnny Impact. A lot of things happening in Impact Wrestling, including Moose and the Rascals. A lot of rivalries that we're covering. We're just trying to catch up from where we left off. And now we're getting back up to date. We're just about to cover last week's show from Friday, April 19th. So once again, Impact Wrestling returned to Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and we saw footage of the feud between Johnny Impact and Brian Cage. We all saw previously how Johnny Bravo, the senior referee at Impact Wrestling, tripped Brian Cage, and then Taya hit Brian Cage with that low blow, and that must have been painful for Brian. I really hope he was wearing protection, because nobody likes when somebody gets hit right there in that sensitive spot. So then it was time for Scarlett Bordeaux and Fallah Bahh again taking on the Desi Hit Squad. They were successful last time. Let's see how they did this time. So far in both of these matches, like I said, it was interesting that this was an intergender tag team match, but Scarlett Bordeaux, she was the only female in the match, whereas you usually have a woman on both teams. Scarlett was victorious last time, like I said, and she defeated 2 other men, so she's proven before that she can go up among the men. And it's incredible what kind of charisma Fallah Bahh has over the fans. I mean, despite the fact that all he says is his last name in several different tones, the fans are still 100% behind him, chanting his name. And the fans teased the Desi Hit Squad, chanting baldies at them, and when Scarlett was tagged in by Fallah Bahh, Raj, the other member of Desi Hit Squad, he wanted no part of it. But Gama Singh, the manager of Desi Hit Squad, he kept on telling Raj to fight Scarlett Bordeaux anyway. So Raj and Rohit kept tagging one another because neither guy wanted to be the one to take on Scarlett, and she wanted to wrestle, but she accepted Fallah Bahh's tag regardless. So as soon as Fallah Bahh entered the ring, the Desi Hit Squad was all over him, and the Desi Hit Squad did a great job cutting the ring in half, as they always do. The Desi Hit Squad kept Fallah Bahh in the corner of the ring, but then both Rohit and Raj, they collided, and a little bit of miscommunication, and it allowed Scarlett to receive a tag from Fallah Bahh. Now, it looked like Scarlett was going to do a high-risk dive through the ropes, but Rohit Raju appeared right in front of Scarlett, and Scarlett managed to fight Rohit away with the head scissors, Hurricane Rana-looking like move, and Scarlett held the ropes for Fallah Bahh to do a high-risk dive through the ropes, and it was insane seeing Fallah Bahh diving like a 400-pound human torpedo, and then Scarlett went for the top rope, crossbody to the floor on both members of the Desi Hit Squad, and then you had Scarlett, she had Raj right where she wanted him, and that was right in the corner, as it looked like Scarlett was going to go for that stink face. And with these two, you really never know who it's going to be, whether it's going to be Scarlett Bordeaux or Fallah Bahh delivering that stink face. And yes, it truly is like a random fortune cookie or like a box of chocolates. You just don't know which one you'll get. But as Raj sat there all helpless in the corner, Rohit saved him by pulling Raj out of the ring, and for some reason, just like a stunt double in a Hollywood action film, Rohit replaced Raj and put himself in a vulnerable position as he was setting himself up for a stink face from either Scarlett Bordeaux or Fallah Bahh. And yes, there is a huge difference. Now, just for suspense, Scarlett told Raj to close his eyes, and he did. Now, if you're not familiar with Fallah Bahh, like I said, he's a 400-pounder from the Philippines, so imagine that rear end being in your face while you were thinking it was going to be Scarlett Bordeaux, and then you open your eyes and it's Fallah Bahh's posterior, the last thing that you're going to be seeing. And that's exactly what happened to poor Rohit Raju, thinking that he was going to hit the jackpot from Scarlett Bordeaux, and instead all he got was Fallah Bahh. So Raj got back into the ring, and Scarlett sent Raj into Fallah Bahh, who connected with a belly-to-belly suplex. Scarlett then went piggybacking on Fallah Bahh, and as Fallah Bahh went to the top rope, you had Fallah Bahh landing on Raj, and as did Scarlett Bordeaux. Now, Fallah Bahh was sitting right on Raj's head, while Scarlett Bordeaux was sitting right behind Fallah Bahh. So Scarlett got the pin on Raj, and another victory for Scarlett over the Desi Hit Squad. Falabon Scarlet got that victory. This is twice now over the Desi Hit Squad. Gama Singh must not be happy, and I wonder what kind of discipline he's going to be giving his team over that. Then we saw the Lucha Bros in an undisclosed location. Phoenix was giving Eli Drake and Eddie Edwards props for beating LAX, so that meant that Eli Drake and Eddie Edwards could take on the best tag team on the planet in tonight's main event, as Phoenix was alluding to his own tag team, the Lucha Bros. He was calling himself the best tag team in the planet. And we saw a video package for a new tag team, the Deaners. Now, there was all this bluegrass music being played, and one of the Deaners was about to go drink an adult beverage, but the other Deaner scared him off because he was supposed to be training, and he drank it instead while the other Deaner wasn't looking. Now, we've seen Cody Deaner in the past in the GFW days, Global Force Wrestling, with Jeff Jarrett back in the day, but now he's assembled a tag team, so we will see his team debuting, the Deaners, later this week on Friday, on the 26th of April. Then you had the three best friends, and that's Eli Drake, Kenny the Kendo Stick, yes, that's a kendo stick, that's not an actual person, and Eddie Edwards. They were all backstage, and they were happy to get the win against LAX, and now they have an opportunity to face the Lucha Bros for the Impact Wrestling Tag Team Championship, and that's going to be all for the gold in the main event for this episode. Who knows whether they win or lose? Maybe they could find themselves in a three-way tag team match at Rebellion. All they got to do is impress somebody. So later in the show, Don Callis, Executive Vice President at Impact Wrestling, and on commentary, he was talking to Josh Matthews, and Don brought up a great point that he didn't know who to trust because the Impact World Champion Johnny Impact pulled enough weight to corrupt Impact Wrestling senior official Johnny Bravo when Johnny Bravo tripped Brian Cage in Johnny Impact's title defense match, and Johnny Impact always finds somebody to be his henchman, and now he got an Impact Wrestling official. Now, the ref is supposed to be neutral, keeping it down the line. But this guy, Johnny Bravo, he already picked which side he was going to be on long before this match began. So Tommy Dreamer is talking about how OVE's Madman Fulton reminded Tommy of himself in some ways. They were both trained by some of the same people, but Tommy did some research and he revealed that Fulton was kicked out of a wrestling program because he was a rebel, and to have not liked such a corporate structure in the WWE, Tommy said that the difference between Tommy Dreamer and Madman Fulton is that Tommy fights for a cause while Madman Fulton just fights for himself, and it's violence versus violence, but it's passion versus hate. So that was Tommy Dreamer's message for Madman Fulton as they would face one another later in the night. And it was time for Moose to take on one of the Rascals. Now previously Moose took out Zach Wentz, but this time it would be Desmond Xavier to stand up to Moose. And Moose came out wearing a black and gold robe. Moose, he's this powerhouse, while Desmond, like the other Rascals, he has speed on his side. So Moose was just carrying Desmond with his strength, and Desmond went for the wrong play against Moose with a slow gut-wrench-like move. Desmond should have gone for something more in his fast-paced playbook, and Desmond delivered a hard fist into Moose's face, and Moose didn't look too happy. I think it just made him more ticked off. I don't think it actually had an effect on Moose. Desmond tried to go for a Hurricane Rana, but Moose caught him, and they locked arms in a test of strength, and everybody knows that Moose would have that advantage, and he sent Desmond flying. So Moose then had Desmond in a bear hug, and Moose applied pressure to suck the oxygen out of Desmond. But Desmond escaped that hold, and Moose launched Desmond face first into the turnbuckle. That move looked so dangerous, like Desmond had whiplash from that collision with the turnbuckle. And Moose sent Desmond into the other turnbuckle, and you had Desmond, he just seemed out of it. I mean, he looked like he was fading, like he was about to go unconscious. And Moose was walking on the back of Desmond all disrespectfully, like Moose knew that he was about to win this. I mean, he didn't have any doubts. And Moose was happy to be taking out another member of the Rascals after they made fun of him for being rejected by Impact Wrestling backstage interviewer Melissa Santos when Moose tried to flirt with her. This former NFL lineman was driving his shoulders into Desmond Xavier, who was stuck in the corner. And at one point, Desmond tried to go for a dive to the outside of the ring on Moose, but Moose caught Desmond and threw him against the steel steps head first. Then Moose threw Desmond back at the Rascals, like his whole team. They all went down like bowling pins. And Moose brought the Rascals into this, so they just interfered, and the ref didn't say anything, and we just had our winner, Desmond Xavier, pulling a huge upset over Moose. Moose was so embarrassed to be beat by a guy much smaller than him in size. So then you had Kiera Hogan. She appeared to have been still in the undead realm, and Rosemary was telling her to do as she was told and to stay out. But Kiera knew exactly who she was looking for. Rosemary told Kiera to go away, but Kiera called Rosemary out when she had gone to the undead realm while Allie was being consumed by the darkness, and Rosemary told Kiera that everything would have been fine if Allie had only listened. Then she wouldn't have been consumed by the darkness. Now, Rosemary pointed out that they had Su Yung right where they wanted her, but that it was Kiera Hogan who allowed herself to fall hostage to Su Yung. Kiera Hogan defended herself, saying that if she didn't come out to rescue Rosemary from all of Su Young's undead bridesmaids, that Rosemary wouldn't still be here. And Kiera said that since there are two of them in the fight, that's how it would be, whether Rosemary liked it or not. So Rosemary and Kiera Hogan began battling in the undead realm, and Rosemary was strangling Kiera with a chain around her neck. With Kiera Hogan down, Rosemary said now there was only one. So we'll be talking more about Impact Wrestling right after these messages.
Man, this sucks. I can't go to the baseball game because I have to pack. We're moving next week and I have to get enough large boxes.
Did someone say oxes?
No, I said boxes. Ox's boxes are strong like an ox and durable for moving trips.
They're also biodegradable, which is just great for the environment. Download the Ox's Boxes app on your phone today, and your first box is free. And now we're offering same-day deliveries if you order before 4 p.m. on any given business day. Like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
I'm not finished with you!
And now, let's get back to the show. Hey wrestling fans, this is Felix The Cat Katlovski, and this is Fear After Dark. We're still talking Impact Wrestling. You're listening to NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with you. And we were just talking about some of the feuds that have been taking place on Impact Wrestling. We're already into last week's episode from April 19th on Friday. And right now we're talking about how Su Yung killed off Allie. Allie turned into a darker path. She was all perky before, and then she was consumed by the darkness, and she took a different personality. But out of nowhere, she just didn't even see it coming. Su Yung had a metal claw, and she just slit Allie's throat, and Allie was killed off. You don't have to freak out. Allie will be in AEW, so you'll still be able to see her there, but she won't be in Impact Wrestling. Like I said, she's been killed off, and her two best friends, Rosemary and Kiera Hogan, they're fighting over, I guess you can say, who's responsible. Rosemary still thinks that it was Allie's fault because all she had to do was listen and not be consumed by the darkness, and she wouldn't have been. But Kiera Hogan stuck with her till the very end, and even though Allie got killed off, Rosemary and Kiera Hogan, they don't see eye to eye right now, so we'll see what happens between those two. But now, continuing from where we left off, you had Tessa Blanchard, and she had a message for Gail Kim, and Tessa was not happy that not only did Gail Kim cost Tessa her Knockouts championship that she won, but she lost it to Taya in January's homecoming event because of Gail Kim's special guest referee interference. After that, now you had Gail Kim costing Tessa a match against Madison Rayne. Now, at first, Tessa thought that Gail was just trying to relive her glory days, like that one match that we saw where Gail Kim scored that upset over Awesome Kong in that Global Wrestling Network GWN footage that aired from classic moments from Impact Wrestling history. But then Tessa realized that Gail Kim was just trying to stop her. She was trying to stop Tessa from rising in her career, because everybody's already talking about Tessa Blanchard and how everybody knows that even at 23 years old, she's going to be a Wrestling Hall of Famer one day. Now, Tessa is saying that Gail Kim knows that Tessa will be the greatest knockout of all time, and Gail Kim doesn't want Tessa to surpass her, and that's why Gail Kim keeps on interfering in Tessa's matches. Tessa knows that at 23, she's already achieved more than Gail Kim has, and Tessa said the most relevant thing that Gail Kim has done was marrying a chef. So Tessa wants Gail's husband to know who Gail really is, and how she's just jealous and insecure. So she actually went to Gail Kim's husband's restaurant. Now, some guy, he was looking for his date. I guess it was their first date. They never met each other. And he thought, when he saw Tessa, he thought it was his date Jessica, who we don't know who she is, but apparently this guy thought Tessa was his date Jessica. And Tessa was, I don't know, she thought it was kind of funny. She thought, who is this guy? So she poured a cup of water at him, and then Tessa was looking for Robert, that's Gail Kim's husband, the chef. So Tessa snagged some food from some guy's plate, and she spit it out, and I guess she doesn't like Robert's cooking. Now, knowing that she's looking for the chef, Tessa went to the kitchen, because she knows that's where the chef's gotta be. So Tessa tossed some clean dishes on the floor. She kicked out the dishwasher. Now, the chef was cutting vegetables, and Tessa grabbed the knife and asked if he was threatening her with the knife as she was about to press charges. And Tessa was still looking for Robert when she found out that he wasn't in that day, but there was some other chef working that day, and Tessa called him a fraud, just like Gail Kim, because this is Gail Kim's husband's restaurant, and Robert is supposed to be the chef. So Tessa sent a message to Robert by pouring food all over this other chef. And one of the restaurant staff wasn't happy that people were leaving because of Tessa Blanchard, her actions. So Tessa started breaking the dishes on the floor as she poured some kind of soup all over this worker's head. Now, Tessa said that Gail Kim wanted to make things personal, so now after this altercation at Gail Kim's husband's restaurant, Tessa made it personal, and she'll be seeing Gail Kim at Rebellion on April 28th in Toronto. Next, Melissa Santos was interviewing Gail Kim and asking if she would be pressing charges on Tessa for vandalizing the restaurant, but Gail said she wouldn't. Gail thinks Tessa is an entitled, spoiled brat, and it reminded Gail of herself when she had a chip on her shoulder, and she had to learn the hard way. So Gail said that pressing charges isn't going to teach Tessa a lesson, but Gail will teach Tessa herself. And then we had Madman Fulton. He was joined by Sami Callihan to take on Tommy Dreamer in singles action. Fulton knocked Dreamer out of the ring, and Callihan got involved, but the referee ejected Callihan early into the match, and Fulton had the upper hand with Callihan watching his back, but this time Callihan wasn't there. So Fulton was still a beast with his strength over Dreamer, but Dreamer still managed to throw Fulton into the ring post on the outside. Now, Tommy thought he was more hardcore than Fulton, but Dreamer found himself stuck on the guardrail with his groin in pain. And later, Madman Fulton had Dreamer down on the ring canvas, but when Fulton went to jump on the top rope, Fulton missed, and Dreamer managed to do the cutter on Fulton. Now, it hardly fazed Fulton, who just stood there and delivered a hard fist at Dreamer. Dreamer managed to DDT Fulton, and he got a kendo stick, but Fulton still defeated Tommy Dreamer. So even after that match ended, Madman Fulton was trying to rearrange Tommy Dreamer's face, but Willie Mack ran into the ring with a chair to make the save, but OVE's Jake and Dave Christ got involved, so Rich Swann came to attack them. Now, all of a sudden, OVE's Sami Callihan was strangling Rich Swann with a baseball bat, and then Callihan did a pile driver on Rich Swann. Now, then Callihan and Madman Fulton, along with Jake and Dave Christ, that's all of OVE, they were standing over Tommy Dreamer, Willie Mack, and Rich Swann. OVE tied Rich Swann's arms to the ropes, and they made Swann watch as Callihan was going to use a chair to break Tommy Dreamer's arm. Now, Callihan said, "I love you, little brother," to Rich Swann, and then he attacked Rich Swann with that baseball bat. So there you go, just unhinged actions with Sami Callihan. One moment he says he loves him, and then the next moment he attacks him. This was just like how Sami Callihan sent Rich Swann to the hospital, and he explained that he did it because he loved him. This guy is twisted. He's just sick. So we saw a video of Rob Van Dam, and he spoke about how he's been wrestling internationally, and while he wasn't wrestling for WWE anymore, fans still continue to watch RVD wherever he goes. So RVD had a message to all the wrestlers that were trying to imitate his moves. Now we saw another video, this time of the Deaners, and they look to go big or go home for their debut later this week on Impact. Now, the Deaners were seen riding on what looked to be a John Deere tractor, and this might be their ride all the way to Windsor, Ontario, Canada. That's a long ride, and tractors don't go too fast. They'd be better off calling Uber, honestly, if they don't have their own vehicle to drive. So Rich Swann, he thanked Willie Mack for having his back against OVE. Now, Tommy Dreamer, he wasn't as lucky as he had limited mobility in his arm, and we didn't know yet whether there would be a fracture or if Tommy Dreamer broke his arm, but he was about to be x-rayed, so we hope to get an update on the condition of Tommy Dreamer. Now, just as Rich Swann left, you had Killer Kross. He tried to get into Willie Mack's head, and he tried to wedge this team apart between Willie Mack and Rich Swann. Killer Kross kept saying how Willie Mack always has to make the save when Rich Swann is in trouble, and Willie Mack wanted nothing to do with Killer Kross. I mean, Mack knows that Killer Kross hangs out with his clique, with Moose and Johnny Impact, and he just didn't want anything to do with that because he knows he can't trust these guys. So Madison Rayne took on Taya Valkyrie, and Taya came to the ring after Madison Rayne, but Taya had a message for Canada. She called Canada a black hole because it became known as a country that is overly apologetic, like a pushover, and that's why she left it. That's why Taya got out of Canada. And Taya said she made an executive decision and that as Knockouts champion, she will not be wrestling tonight. And she told Madison Rayne and all the fans to enjoy the show, but that Taya was leaving. And Madison wasn't about to let that happen. Taya fled the ring after Madison went on the attack, and the fans weren't happy to see Taya, especially that she trashed their country, but also that the champion was trying to avoid a match with Madison Rayne. So as Taya was still on the ramp, Jordan Grace came from behind and pushed Taya back into the ring. Taya managed to throw a hard punch, knocking Madison Rayne down briefly, but with all the distractions, Taya couldn't stay focused. Madison rolled Taya up to get a 3 count and a win over Taya. Now, Taya was furious with the referee, but what could he have done? I mean, was she expecting another senior referee, Johnny Bravo, to trip her opponent as well, just like he did for Johnny Impact? Taya made her exit up the ramp, still holding the Knockouts Championship up high, and Taya still holds her Knockouts Championship, but will we have a new champion on Sunday this week at Rebellion on April 28th. So Impact Wrestling's investigative reporter had some more questions for the world champion, Johnny Impact. Johnny turned on his friend Brian Cage, and he's had his buddies Moose and Killer Kross do him favors to hold down his opponents in the past. Now his own wife, Taya Valkyrie, she's interfering in his matches, and now Johnny has corrupted a senior official at Impact Wrestling, that being Johnny Bravo. The reporter said that Johnny orchestrated a lie, but Johnny has no apologies. Johnny realized as the world champion that he's not fighting for the fans. No, he's in this for himself. And Johnny got ready for his match against Brian Cage at Rebellion, but Johnny admits that Brian Cage is one of the best athletes in the business, and that for a guy his size at 280 pounds, it's impressive that he can still pull off X Division-like moves, moving like a cruiserweight. And Johnny said that Brian can do almost anything that Johnny can, except for thinking. Johnny Bravo stood behind Johnny Impact, and the world champion said that he thinks he helped Johnny Bravo because in the past, Bravo was just a stooge referee, and that he was getting clotheslined by Brian Cage. Now he's tripping Brian Cage. So Johnny pointed out that Brian Cage doesn't get that if Johnny could influence a senior referee at Impact Wrestling, there's no stopping where he could get to next. Johnny could get to Brian Cage's mom or Brian Cage's girlfriend and any of his relatives. Johnny thinks that he's been creative with his plans, but Brian Cage is unable to think, as Johnny put it. Johnny knows that what matters is keeping his gold, and that's exactly what Johnny Impact plans to do at Rebellion when he faces the machine, Brian Cage. Johnny pointed out that Brian Cage will never live up to his potential, and that's what the fans will remember long after Johnny Impact beats Brian Cage on April 28th in Toronto. Now, after Johnny Impact made his exit, Brian Cage confronted Don Callis, and he began choking Don Callis out. And Callis was trying to call for Scott D'Amore. He was trying to get his help, but he couldn't get a hold of him. Callis eventually tried making phone calls, but he couldn't get a response because Scott, well, he's a very busy man at Impact Wrestling, making sure the show is running smoothly. Now, when Don Callis did reach Scott D'Amore, Executive Vice President at Impact Wrestling, Don was warning him that Brian Cage had gone nuts and that Scott should head to the next town for his own safety. Now, Brian Cage was still angry about his match and the referee situation, and to calm Brian Cage down, Don Callis told Cage that he had a plan, but clearly there was no plan. And at that point, Scott knew that the machine was out to kill him, and as Scott got off the phone, right behind him was Brian Cage. So, surprise. Now, Scott said that he knew about the plan, but he didn't let Brian Cage know that there was no plan about what to do about the referee situation. Brian Cage, he wanted to know what the plan was, but all that Scott was saying was that he was still working on the plan. So Brian Cage grabbed Scott again, but then out of nowhere, Lance Storm, he tried to get Brian Cage to calm down and to conduct himself like a professional and to have some integrity. So Brian Cage said that he wanted to know what the plan was, and Scott told him in what looked to be a last-second decision that Lance Storm would be the special guest referee. Brian Cage seemed satisfied with the special guest ref. Now, Brian Cage seemed like he was calmed down, and Scott D'Amore was happy that he had a plan coming together. Now, Lance Storm looked confused. I mean, you could tell that Scott just dodged a bullet, and he was just winging it. I mean, there probably was no plan. Thinking more about it, deeply, it just seems like Johnny Impact influenced a senior referee, and what's stopping Johnny Impact from corrupting the front office like Don Callis and Scott D'Amore? Something seems really fishy about management at Impact Wrestling. And then it was time for the main event as Eddie Edwards and Eli Drake, they were ready for their Impact Wrestling Tag Team title match against the champions, the Lucha Bros. That's Phoenix and Pentagon, for all you that don't know. And Eddie Edwards, he brought his kendo stick Kenny just to be prepared for anything that came his way. So Eddie Edwards and Eli Drake, they started the match in control and matching up well on the Lucha Bros. They cut the ring in half, and they kept Phoenix on their side of the ring, not letting Pentagon get a tag in, while Eddie and Eli made quick tags. And Pentagon made his way to the ring to help Phoenix, and the Lucha Bros came back to be in control of the match. Now the Lucha Bros isolated Eli Drake, and they found their opening as the Lucha Bros went stereo with super kicks, both targeting Eli Drake from all directions. Now Phoenix dived on Eddie Edwards from the top rope to the outside of the ring, while Pentagon went for a pin on Eli. But he couldn't close the match out just yet, as Eli made the kick out. Now, with Eddie Edwards down on the outside, Phoenix was looking to fly again, this time on Eli Drake. But Santana from LAX, he ran in and knocked Phoenix off the top rope. I mean, there's interference right there. I mean, LAX and the Lucha Bros, they still have fresh rivalry going on, and that's leading into Rebellion, so they haven't forgotten about them. Like I said, that rivalry is still red hot between LAX and the Lucha Bros. Ortiz got involved as well, but Phoenix kicked both members of LAX off the ring apron. With the Lucha Bros distracted with LAX, Eli looked to end the match with a quick roll-up on Pentagon, but Pentagon kicked out. Eddie Edwards tried to distract the ref as Eli was swinging the kendo stick at Pentagon, but Eli missed, and Pentagon kicked Eli in the head. And that's when the Lucha Bros showed teamwork as they landed the Fear Factor pile driver on Eli, just spiking him on his head. Just then, Phoenix, using his speed, took a dive through the ropes onto Eddie Edwards, and that's when Pentagon went for the win. And he got the win as the Lucha Bros retained their tag team gold. Now, after the match, the Lucha Bros would have liked to celebrate their title defense over Eli Drake and Eddie Edwards, but LAX were still on the hunt for the Lucha Bros. You had both LAX and the Lucha Bros. They brawled on the outside of the ring. Both these teams fought up the ramp as Eddie Edwards went to check on his partner Eli Drake. Eddie Edwards was still carrying that kendo stick Kenny after losing the match to the Lucha Bros and coming up short. Eddie Edwards, he went for a handshake, but Eli Drake wasn't ready to shake it just yet. Eli was still frustrated about losing the match, but eventually Eli did come around and shook Eddie Edwards' hand. But just after Eddie turned around, Eli attacked Eddie Edwards from behind, and it looks like this tag team is over. So Eli grabbed Eddie Edwards' kendo stick, and Eli whacked Eddie with it over the head. Now Eddie Edwards will know not to trust anybody, not even his own tag team partner. So that's how Impact Wrestling closed out the night for April 19th on Friday last week. And when we come back, we'll be talking about Lights Out, everything what's to come to Impact Wrestling, right after this.
Spoiled meat? Who has time for that? But with a dehydrator, you can keep it edible.
But I'm a vegetarian. I buy so many vegetables for my family, but each time I open the fridge, it reeks of spoiled food.
Buying fresh vegetables can get expensive, and the shelf life becomes a race to the finish. With Space Fresh X, for only 3 easy payments of $14.95, you can own this appliance and stop buying overpriced tiny bottles of dried vegetables. So what are you waiting for? Call 1-800-S-FRESH-X. That's 1-800-737-3749. Order today.
Follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
I'm not finished with you!
And now, let's get back to the show. Hello, wrestling fans. This is Felix the Cat Katlovski, and welcome back to Talk Wrestling Live on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the Underground starts with you. And if you're just joining us, we already went over what happened at Impact Wrestling last week on April 19th. And we're just about to get started with what's coming soon to Impact Wrestling on Lights Out. So let's get it started with Lights Out.
Hello, ladies.
Shut up, 5.
man is talking.
I'm surprised you're containing yourself. It's like looking at a work of art, Josh. Scarlett Bordeaux has arrived on Impact Wrestling. Oh my God.
Hey, tell them to cover up. I will not be hot shamed.
Talk about making an impact.
Make wrestling sexy again.
Scarlett Bordeaux has arrived. And now she's leaving, and it's, oh Lord.
Turn the lights down low, cause it's time for Impact Lights Out.
Hey wrestling fans, and we're back for another edition of Lights Out, where, as I said, we talk about everything coming soon to Impact Wrestling, so let's go over that. So the matches for Impact Wrestling for this week on Friday, April 26th on the Pursuit channel and on Twitch at 10 p.m. This will be the final Impact before the Rebellion pay-per-view on April 28th. So we know that LAX and Brian Cage, they will be teaming up as they take on the Lucha Bros and Johnny Impact. Now, both LAX and the Lucha Bros, they have unfinished beef right there that's going to be carrying into Rebellion. And Brian Cage, he's got some beef with Johnny Impact, which also carries into Rebellion. They'll be taking on each other for that world title. And LAX and the Lucha Bros, they'll be going for the tag team titles. So it's good that they put both Brian Cage and Johnny Impact against each other, teaming them with LAX and the Lucha Bros right there. So we'll see which team comes out on top. But this is going to be like practice, because both these teams, all these teams, they're all going against each other at Rebellion in their own way. Like I said, LAX taking on the Lucha Bros in tag team action, and Brian Cage will be taking on Johnny Impact in singles action towards that pay-per-view. But still sticking to Impact Wrestling for this episode, we also have Killer Kross, and he'll be taking on Willie Mack. And if you saw on Impact Wrestling last week, you would have seen how right after Rich Swann left, after Willie Mack had to go and save him, you had Rich Swann trying to save Tommy Dreamer, and Willie Mack tried to save Rich Swann, but things didn't work out. Killer Kross at the end, he tried to get into Willie Mack's head, trying to wedge this team apart, trying to make him say, oh, Willie Mack, you're always here making the save for Rich Swann, you could be better. And Willie Mack, he was smarter than that. He didn't want to associate with Killer Kross. He knows he can't trust him. He knows the type of people he hangs out with, like Moose and Johnny Impact. These people, they're in it for themselves. They're not in it for others. Now, we also know that Rosemary will be back in action. Rich Swann, he's also going to be going to that OVE compound, and he's got more guts than brains right there. We know that Rebellion takes place on April 28th from Toronto, Ontario, Canada at the Rebel Entertainment Complex. We know the matches so far for that have been scheduled. It's a Full Metal Mayhem match. Anything metal is legal. So the Impact Wrestling Tag Team Championships, those will be on the line in this match when the Lucha Bros, the champions, take on LAX. We also know that the Impact World Championship title match, that's going to be going on when Johnny Impact, the champion, faces Brian Cage, and these guys hate each other. I mean, Johnny Impact hires whoever to be his henchman, from Killer Kross, Moose, and even senior referee at Impact Wrestling, Johnny Bravo. You don't know what kind of influence Johnny Impact has and where he can take it. He could even be controlling the front office, so Brian Cage really has to be prepared, be cautious, because Johnny Impact, he's able to buy people to do him favors. And then you have, for the Impact Knockouts Championship, it's up for grabs when Taya Valkyrie, the champion, takes on Jordynne Grace. And Jordynne Grace kept shoving Taya in the ring each time she tries to escape, but she can't avoid her opponent at Rebellion, Jordynne Grace. So on April 29th, Impact Wrestling stays in the Toronto Rebel Entertainment Complex the night after Rebellion for a night of TV tapings. As we know, Rob Van Dam will be there. He last competed at United We Stand, an Impact Wrestling event exclusively seen on the Fight app, where Rob Van Dam and Sabu took on the Lucha Bros in an Extreme Dream match. You can still see that on the Fight app. Now, with RVD back in Impact Wrestling, he'll also be at the Impact Wrestling event in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at the ECW Arena, currently known as the 2300 Arena. Now, lots of hardcore memories were created in that building, and now Rob Van Dam, RVD, will return there along with Impact Wrestling, making its very first stop in that building on May 3rd through the 4th. And on Sunday, May 5th, Impact Wrestling will be working with House of Glory, that's Vince Russo's wrestling promotion, for the show Code Red in Jamaica, New York, at the New York City Arena. So we've been talking about Impact Wrestling today, but that does it for today's show of Talk Wrestling Live. We hope you join us next week on northcoastunderground.com, where the underground starts with you.
You've been listening to Talk Wrestling Live. Listen live on Mondays at 4 p.m. on northcoastunderground.com.
And follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
Goodbye and good night, bad.
Rest in